Hello, welcome to another episode of Confessions of a Dog Trainer. I'm so happy you're here. As always, my little hello to my dad. I've got my cup of joe. I'll wait for you to get yours. This is my favorite little coffee cup that I got from, I'm going to have to add her information in the um, show notes. I saw her at like a little cute market by our house a couple months ago and fell in love with her stuff. And I got two cups and two bowls, and then I couldn't stop thinking about this cup. And so we went back to get this one, and it's my favorite. Okay. Anyway, so I wanted to do kind of like a part two, kind of follow up to the last episode about Jax, who was much more like his chronic whiner. And it's just interesting. A lot of you could relate to that over on Instagram. If you don't follow on Instagram, if you want more information about or the full picture of what Jax's board and train looked like, his training, his progress from start to finish, I have two highlights for him over on Instagram. And you just look those little like circles on my profile at Walking Dog Training. And you can see over the course of 2 weeks how it went for him. So if you haven't listened to the episode right before this one, I'd recommend listening to that one first, and then this would be a good follow up. So I wanted to talk about what really helped me see the biggest difference in Jax going from whiny all the time to much less whiny, much more calm. It was just a really cool thing to see because anxious stuff can be really challenging. Whiny stuff is slightly triggering for me, not slightly, very. But over the years, I've gotten more, not so much, not as triggered as I used to get because I would just feel like absorb the whiny, anxious stuff, and it would make me feel more anxious because I am inherently, I think, a more anxious person. So it would just make me feel more that way. So over the years, I've realized taking more breaks is essential when working with a dog like him. I'm so grateful I only had him to work with. I can't imagine if I had two or more dogs to work with. So I really feel for other trainers out there who bring in more dogs at a time. But the thing, I want to talk about a couple of things that I think helped the most with helping him go from super, super anxious, super whiny, reactive, all over the place to not. And he's still inherently, I don't know if that's the right word, and he's still himself. So he still has the potential to be reactive, to want to nip at people, just because he is such a primal dog. And I've only worked with one other dog that kind of reminds me of this. It was a border collie rider. Is that right? Um, and he was one of the coolest dogs because he was so primal. And it's so easy in dog training or as an owner to forget that your dog is an animal. Like they came from wolves that were in the wild, fending for themselves. It's just so different where now it's like we baby our dogs and they sleep with us or they're on the couch. Like, listen, ever since I got Johnny, our newest dog, who's we got around 6 months. He's now a year. I'm obsessed with him. I baby him because when you get a dog, you have this vision of what it's supposed to go like. And I finally have that, where our last dogs, one of which is the reason that I'm a dog trainer. So I'm very grateful. I think everything happens for a reason. But I never had the experience of like a dog that you imagine getting where they want to cuddle with you and they're just sweet and like don't have all the issues coming with them. And I love laying on the couch with Johnny. It's like he is my he makes me so happy. I think that's actually what's helped me with working with a dog like Jax. I come in, I'm not working with Jax, put him in his kennel. I come in and I can hang out with Johnny and our other dogs, of course, but Johnny is just, he's special. He's different. And after all the dogs we've had and all the behavioral issues and just never feeling like, why can't I get a dog that just feels dreamy? And that is Johnny. So I'm really soaking all of that in, and he has no behavioral issues. He's scared of people, but he's great for us. But I think that really helped me working with Jax, really, I think. But the things about Jax, I got sidetracked because when I talk about Johnny, I get very, I don't know, I just love him so much. So I just want to tell you all the things about him, but that's not what this episode is about. So with Jax, let's go straight to one of the biggest things that made the biggest difference with him. And first, let me tell you a little bit about him before, if you, just as a reminder. So with his contact form that an owner fills out prior to the board and train program, I don't meet the owner or dog beforehand. I just find that it's not necessary. And I kind of think it's fun and even more exciting for me when I meet the dog on drop off day. Sometimes that, most of the time, it's totally fine. And it's really not like I get a dog who blows me away with how different they are from what I was told through the contact form. One thing with Jax is I wasn't told about his whiny stuff. And it's very interesting because his owner, I think she was telling me about this at the go home session. She just didn't think to bring it up. Where for me, the whiny stuff is just such a it's the way I think about it. It's a manifestation of his genetic makeup. He's an Australian Shepherd. He's very drivey. He could literally be. You could put him on a farm and he could herd sheep today. And I don't work with many dogs like that, so that's why I enjoyed working with him, because he's so primal. It just makes me come back to like, I am working with an animal. I'm not working with a little doodle who I put a sweater on, which I am. I love putting a sweater on a dog, by the way. Susie, I did that. I went and bought her a sweater. But it's just, sometimes it's nice to come back to like, oh yeah, this is an animal. So with Jax, a couple of things that his owner was struggling with is he nipped at some people, nipped at some kids. And what I have found, because I never got nervous about him nipping at me, from the contact form and then meeting him in person, what I felt like was um, he just had a lot of energy that wasn't being, his physical stuff wasn't being fulfilled because he was just so reactive on the walk. It's, you all know, like when you have a dog who's reactive, it's hard to walk them. And so sometimes you just have them hang out in the backyard or have them inside and give them more freedom and hope that that kind of expends some of that energy. But what I found is that all of that energy and that like um, just his need for more physical activity, because that wasn't being fulfilled. This is no shade against the owner. We've all been there. So definitely none of that. It's more interesting to see when we can fulfill those parts of him, we bring out the best in him. And this is a note for anyone who has really any dog, but especially a dog who is a working breed, the shepherds, any dog who, if you look them up on Google, it'll say they were bred to herd sheep or burrow in the dirt to find rats or something. I mean, it's kind of interesting if you look up the breed that you have, if you have a breed and not a mix. But once we fulfill that side of him with something I did was biking with him, which I love so much. I'll link a video that I recorded with him talking about how I start that with a dog. First, I like to get the walk under control. So the e-collar is a big part of that. Okay, I feel like I'm bouncing around a lot. And maybe that's okay. But I don't want to miss the pieces that were really essential to helping him go from super anxious, super whiny, super amped up all the time to being able to relax. And a lot of you would message me on Instagram, which was so cool. I think a lot of you could relate to an Australian Shepherd, very popular breed. But you would say he looks so much softer now, because the first, and if you want to see, go to Instagram, look at his highlights. The first play session we had, I took video and he was like so bug-eyed and he just had a lot of pent-up energy. So what I have found with him is that, one, using the e-collar to interrupt the whiny stuff was 1000% helpful. It helped to kind of speed up the process a bit, because when you can interrupt the whiny, anxious loop, this is how I like to think of it, like a hamster on a wheel. So that's his mindset of like, what do I need to do? What do I need to react to? I mean, he was just reacting to everything. When the owner's boyfriend would come home and he would freak out when the garage door would open. So he was just always like waiting, I feel like, anticipating when he needed to react, because that is a big instinct for him and his breed and just who he is genetically, who Jax is. The other thing was he'd go crazy over the vacuum cleaner. Like the owner called it a psychotic mode, where he would bite at her. And it was just that energy had to go somewhere. And So I could see him reacting that way. And so something that really helped was one, interrupting the whiny stuff with the e-collar. Something I will say is that I know there are other trainers out there who would put a bark collar on him. And I'm just not a huge fan of the bark collar. Doesn't mean you shouldn't use it. I've just had not the best experiences with it when I've used it. I would rather make myself a little extra crazy and manually address the whiny stuff. Where if you use a bark collar, it picks up on whiny stuff, so it will correct it on its own. I'm not, don't ask me really about bark collars because I really don't use them. Again, doesn't mean you shouldn't. I know some trainers, some friends of mine who use them and have great success. And this is something that being a trainer, try different things and do what feels right for you. I've tried a bark collar before. I don't really love it. There's something with a bark collar where dogs have to go through a barking fit where it corrects the barking and they're trying to figure out what is this? And they bark even louder and it's like, then they'll come back down. And I just didn't like that process. So that being said, I would manually use the e-collar for whiny stuff. And someone, I'm not going to say your name, but you know who you are, asked a good question that I'll go ahead and answer. Okay. When do you know the dog is conditioned to the stim? When are you comfortable with using it as a correction? And she also asked about at what stage did correcting him for whining become more of a priority? Is it right away, or do you wait for when you know that they understand what the e-collar pressure means? For me, it was right away. It's all about the levels. So all dogs are so different. With whiny stuff, it can really feel like when you're using the e-collar, sometimes it can feel like you're making the whiny stuff worse. And this is where I say there's like a settling period where you can use the e-collar, and I'll talk a little bit about levels that I used with him. Maybe that would be helpful. It's not like a straightforward plan of you should use this level and then this level and then this level. You have to dial up a little bit, dial down a little bit. This is where there's some nuance to e-collar work for whiny stuff when you're using the e-collar manually for whiny stuff. With Jax, it was on day one. So I did something with him where he was in the kennel and his working level, he was more sensitive to the e-collar initially. And then the more I worked with him, the more he really didn't care about levels. And so I would have to go up higher for certain things, like just even holding him accountable for heel or, well, that's just a really good example. So with whiny stuff, I like to try lower-ish around the working level. So day one, he was in the kennel. I always say no to barking with the e-collar. So what I'll do if I'm working with a dog who has any anxiety in the kennel, because I work with some dogs who they'll go in the kennel and they're great. And that is like dream for me, because it's so nice when you can put a dog in the kennel and just take a break. If a dog is anxious in the kennel, you're still on the clock pretty much. You have to watch a camera. You have to be aware of, you have to just be on. I like to think of it as a trainer. So, or as an owner, you know, if you have a dog who's anxious in the kennel, it makes you anxious when you leave, when you go to dinner or something, you're just always thinking about it. So with Jax, when I put him in the kennel, sure enough, he started barking and some whiny stuff. So what I did was sit in front of the kennel a little bit away, not like right in front of it. And I would tap on at the working level and then dial up just a couple. So what I found with him was that it really did help snap him out of it. His working level was like a 6-7. And then maybe I got up to 10. So it's not so much a correction, it's just a level that he can feel, and it helps to snap him out of that anxious loop. It's just like it's like a tap on the shoulder, like, hey, enough, without talking to him, because he doesn't care what I say. Most dogs don't. So so I started using it for whiny stuff right away, because it's not helpful for a dog when they sit in the kennel and they're allowed to whine and bark and do whatever they want until I've quote unquote conditioned the e-collar. So for me, when I'm working with a dog who is anxious in the kennel, I'll do an intro session. And to me, that's conditioning the e-collar. So the biggest priority is that they understand what the pressure means, so that when I use it in the kennel, they're not freaked out. Like, what is this like thing that's happening to me? So that's really how it looked for him in the beginning. And it's all about levels. So I don't think of it as correcting, even though if he was barking, my level on the e-collar would probably be a little bit higher. And it's all about how the dog responds. So that's really what I'm looking for when I either am correcting for barking or whiny stuff, but I like to introduce the e-collar first. Now, in my e-collar starter guide, which is, I like to think of it, my blueprint to e-collar training for owners, and also, of course, trainers, if you wanted something to go off of, it's much more scheduled. So the reason for that is it's like, let's say, 2 to 3 days of kindergarten phase. So that's the first phase of introducing the e-collar. Where for me, it might look like one day of introducing the e-collar. The reason for this is I can apply my knowledge and my experience where I know this is going to be so valuable if I introduce the e-collar with one session, and then we are practicing some kennel stuff, and I use the e-collar to interrupt barking. And let's say the working level is a 5, and I go up to 45 after a couple of taps. 45 is what meant enough to snap him out of the barking. So that's a correction on day one. So in my e-collar starter guide, I recommend to an owner that they wait until they get to the accountability phase. So that might be a week in. The reason for this is owners, you're so new to e-collar training. The last thing I want you to do is use a level that's more meaningful for a dog, so a correction level, and your dog look like they are less happy than they were before. It can be something so simple where, I mean, I hear it often enough where I know for an owner, it's more helpful if it takes you a little bit longer to where you're correcting a dog. A good example is someone asked me, they have the e-collar starter guide. They messaged me on Instagram and said, we're having friends come over tonight. Is it too soon to correct for jumping? And they were on day 1 or 2 of the e-collar starter guide training schedule. So there's a schedule in there, so you can go by that and have something to work on each day. But I told her, so for me, what I would say is when you're first introducing the e-collar and it's day 1, day 2, having friends come over and correcting for jumping, it's not really fair, because you're setting your dog up for a big moment that's like, that could be the goal to work towards. Like after a week or 2, you have friends come over and then you can address because you've been practicing place daily. You have added in more structure. You've been consistent with routines. Now it's like I like to think of it in sports terms. Like you're going to practice every day, and then when your friends come over, that's like the Super Bowl. Then we can really show this is what we've been working on. Let me address the jumping, correct for that, and then recall over and put on place. So it's not like you're just expecting your dog to know how to behave. An owner's expectations are wildly high because you follow trainers online. I know I'd probably be the same. I was the same way as a trainer when I first started, and I was like, why am I struggling? Why is this dog giving me pushback on day 2 when I never see trainers sharing about this? And it's because it's part of the process. So I like for owners to take a little bit longer, where for me, correcting for barking in the kennel is essential to help the dog go from level 25 to level 2, to go from super amped up to a little bit calmer. So I start using the e-collar for whiny stuff almost right away, but it's not like a correction level. So I think I mentioned that. But introducing the e-collar and using it consistently for things like whiny stuff was so helpful so that I could break that cycle with Jax, where the last 2 years he's been practicing this, where it's whiny, 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 amped up about all the things. So we're working on how can we just like get him to chill. So the e-collar was really helpful for that with whiny things. The thing I mentioned on Instagram is that I didn't use the e-collar for every single whiny moment. And this is the settling stuff that I told you about. So, or that I talk about over there, and I think I mentioned here, where I might address a moment of whiny stuff. So tap on the e-collar as a way to be like, hey, relax. I might say shh or no, just to interrupt that. So it's like you're stopping the hamster wheel. I'm a very visual person, so that makes sense to me. And then we can give him a moment to like, okay, I can't do that anymore. It's kind of like sometimes a temper tantrum, like a little bit more whiny and then settling. So the last thing I want is to tap, 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 tap to try and address every single moment, because that can get a dog more amped up. You want to address a couple of whines and then see if like he'll settle a little bit. And I gave examples of this with him in the car, on place, I'm pretty sure. And that is where you really have to tap into your patience. So for me, I think the reason why I do really enjoy, even though he challenged me big time, I enjoy working with dogs like Jax, who are more like primal, who are working breeds, because I can insert these different routines that give them an outlet for their energy. Biking is so fun. It's just such a great training that, well, quote unquote trainery thing, but it's just another outlet for exercise that's not just the walk. I love a walk, but I also, if you're short on time, like if the owner needs to go to work in the morning, she could take him for a quick 10-minute bike ride and, uh, expend some of his energy. Um, we don't, as much as I would love to say, well, owners need to wake up early and make time to walk their dogs for 30 minutes or longer. Life happens. Like, we all know that. So sometimes biking is a great option. I also like it because with him, I would even do this thing. I didn't even tell the owner this, but I know she's listening. Where I would pretend we're like on a farm, and so I would be biking with him at like a jogging speed where he's not going too fast, and then I would start pedaling faster, and I'd go like, yeah, yeah, like pretending he's like a horse riding next to me. And I just felt like I was in a Western or something. And it was so fun because he would literally hear it and start going faster and not like pulling me. There are rules when you're biking, but just going faster as I bike fast. It was so fun. So anyway, I didn't share that with her. I should have. So e-collar was super helpful for whiny stuff. I think that was the biggest thing with the e-collar, honestly. I don't know why I'm saying honestly. Everything I'm saying is honest, but so that was one. The second thing was the emphasis on calm routines. So someone asked me, which I loved, because I've heard this question before, um, and I feel like it's just not. It's you can do it to a certain extent. So okay, anyway, um, let's see. For an owner of a dog like Jack's, how could we achieve some similar results at home? So, because if you've ever heard of someone saying like a trainer where they have a program that's a board and train you could do at home, there's something to hiring a trainer who has experience with a board and train. Um, there's something unique to that. Because I think a lot of owners, one, they tend to underwhelm their dogs with stuff like if I address reactivity on day 3 on the walk or day 2 with a more meaningful level, an owner might need to take a couple of weeks to do that because I'm saying owners, and I'm sure you're an owner listening, it's very normal to be nervous to use the e-collar in a way that might hurt your dog, might make them uncomfortable, for the fear of making stuff worse. Where for me as a trainer, because of my experience, and I was very similar to you when I first started, but this is what, year 7, I have a lot of hits and misses under my belt, so I have stuff to lean on, experience. I know that that won't break him. I know that that is actually crucial to the process. Um, so anyway, so how you, okay, well, I'm going to go back to that question, but first, just to emphasize it again, the emphasis of calming routines. So to give you a little idea of how much structure he had, and I think this is really why a board and train works so well. It's a huge piece of it that an owner can totally continue. And I encourage an owner that I work with specifically through the board and train to continue this as best they can for at least 2 weeks. That's just the sweet spot I've learned. There are other trainers who will tell owners 3 months. And this is what I like to tell my owners because when they look at me like 2 weeks of no couch time, and I'm like, listen, so many other trainers out there will say 3 months. So I'm really kind of being easy on you. I've just found I always come back to what would sound doable to me as an owner if I went through a board and train? 2 weeks, I can do that. It still would suck if I was used to having, let's say, Johnny on the couch and someone told me he had to be on place for 2 weeks. Okay, that seems like such a long time, but I can do that. And then what I like to tell an owner is you can start to add stuff in. Add having Jax on the couch when you're watching TV, for 30 minutes, after the 2 weeks on the next day, try it. In my experience, one, most owners are like, oh no, I really love place. This is great. He's so much better on place, so much calmer. When they add in like either bed privileges or couch privileges, they see a change. And you can't see that until you see it. You don't understand it until you see it. But with the calming routines, kennel time, place time, heel on the walk, little to no free roaming in my home. And the reason for this is when I have a training dog, it's not helpful to the process of helping, like, let's say for Jax, if I just let him into my home and just was like, didn't give him any guidance, he could do whatever he wanted, it wouldn't be helpful for him. I think a lot of us are conditioned to think when we get a dog, well, giving them like freedom in the house, that's like ideal for them, isn't it? What I found with Jax, and this is for him in particular, when we'd be in the backyard, if he was allowed to do, because that's where I have free time for training dogs, supervised, so they can walk around, they can really do whatever they want. Sometimes dogs like to play together. Sometimes they just walk around and sniff. Some lay in the sun and sunbathe. With him, he would be more whiny if he had more free time in the backyard. And it wasn't until I started giving him the job of down while I'd like lay on the chaise lounge and just relax, where he would finally relax and like sniff the air and just, because he had a job. And this is again where he is such a working breed. So giving him a job was really helpful. So anytime he'd come into my home after a walk, after outside time, I'd put him on place all the time, every single time over the last few weeks. It just became habit. And this is what I tell owners all the time, and what I was telling his owner, because it can feel weird when I say, or when you hear free time is only in the backyard, inside equals calm. But what I have found when working with training dogs, and this being the routine, and also I'm someone who loves calm. I don't like chaos. It makes me feel chaotic. So with my dogs, like we have 4 dogs, you can't hear them right now. They're not like running around being crazy, because inside, calm. Outside can be more chaotic. That's where you can have some free time and Zoom. And I love when our dogs do that. I love when training dogs do that. But if you condition your dog to know when you come inside, we go over to place, we hang out at least 30 minutes an hour, and then you can let them off and see what kind of decisions they make. When I asked Jax's owner, because this is what was telling her, so when you go home, I want outside to be some free time, supervised, of course. Inside equals calm. Every time that you bring him inside, I want him to go to place. And then I asked, well, because she would say, well, so no, like free time walking around. And I was like, well, before training, when he would walk around, would he just lay and do nothing? Because that's different. If a dog comes inside and just lays on the ground and they're just calm, that's great. With Jax, what she told me, and it didn't surprise me, he would just walk around and just like pace. And that's not really helpful. Our German Shepherd does the same thing, Louie, where we have to tell her down. Otherwise, it just walks around all day long. So with Jax, what I said is an emphasis on the calm stuff. So if you can't see him, he should be in the kennel. Calm kennel time is a great routine to get into, very similar to place. It's just place with borders, is how I like to think of the kennel. Place time, every single time he comes inside from outside, from a walk, have that be the new routine. Kenneling overnight when he sleeps, which he did that before, but with an emphasis on calming stuff and giving a job. They're both very similar. So giving him the job of heel on the walk, giving him a job of place in the home, giving him the job of kennel time 3-4 times a day. So adding in those chunks of kennel time is really helpful. So before I forget, how can you get the same results with your dog at home? One, I'd recommend reading through my 7-day reset guide. So I'll link that in the show notes. It's free. It's one of my freebies. I would follow the schedule to a T. And it might feel weird, and you will probably get some pushback, but that is what the board and train process looks like. So when I start adding in new routines for dogs who are used to doing whatever they want, walking around and having more free time, and then I'm like, no, after outside, we're going to go into the kennel. You're going to hang out here for a couple of hours. Most dogs are not used to that, and they don't like it, so they fight it. That's when I have to jump in as a trainer and address barking or whining and just be consistent. And there are some dogs I work with who that can take a week until they're finally like, oh, okay, this is the new routine. I'm not going to fight it anymore. But being consistent and showing them that this is what we're going to do consistently, that should be like the name of this episode. It gets better and better. Something else I noticed with Jax is he's an anxious eater, where he didn't eat all of his food every day. He really didn't eat that much the first week, maybe at least one of his 2 meals, but still he'd leave some in the bowl. It wasn't until the last 3 days of being here where he finally was eating both meals. And so what I have found with him is the calmer he gets, the more comfortable he is with eating all of his food and just kind of, I don't know, a healthier, calmer mindset, I think just helped him feel more comfortable with eating all of his food. Because just think about if you're constantly sitting and like, what's going on? What are we doing? I don't want to eat. There's a lot of people who, when you get anxious, you don't eat. Similar with dogs. So I thought that was interesting. Um, and so with him, the emphasis on calm routines, place, heel, kennel, using the e-collar to interrupt the whiny stuff. And yesterday at the go home session, it was interesting. We had some moments where they would feel a little messy or a little overwhelming. It was such a great opportunity to work through. So this is something for any other trainers out there. And what I would say is tell your owners ahead of time there's going to be some messy moments. It will be a great opportunity to work through. Because what I have found is when I was first a trainer, I would think, oh my gosh, if anything messy happens, the owners are going to think I did a terrible job and regret paying me and doing this with me. What I have found is that if you have moments to work through that are a little bit messy, or a little bit more excitable than they have been with you or something, it is a great thing to work through because now your owner knows, okay, if this happens back at home, which it probably will, just think about dogs push their owners or push their owners. They push the boundaries with their owners all the time. It's such a common thing. Like, well, my dog acts differently with me than my trainer. And it's just, it's how it goes sometimes. So if you can work through those messy moments at the go home session, it will help your owner feel a little bit more confident when they get back home. And if those moments happen, one of the moments was we walked over and we were getting close to her car. And for some reason, Jax was like getting really anxious about the car and like, gotta go to the car, gotta go to the car, which doesn't surprise me because he's such a repetition kind of guy where routine, being consistent with a routine is, it could be an amazing thing or it could make a dog get whiny and anxious. So like our Charlie and Sadie, who's since passed, but when we used to take them to the dog park, the only time that we'd go in the car is to the dog park. What does the dog park equal? Excited, crazy time. So in the car, they would go from window to window, excited, excited. So car rides equaled excitement. Jax was known to be really anxious and excitable in the car and just not fun to drive with. So kind of made sense. He sees her car. Well, let's go into that crazy mode or anxious mode. So when we started getting close to it, he was being pushy with heel. So we were addressing that. But then also she got closer and he started trying to go towards the car and she corrected with the e-collar because most of the session, the owner is using the e-collar because I want them to get used to using it, feeling a little fumbly so we can talk through it, get comfortable dialing up and down with me there for reassurance. I want them to get used to using it as quickly as possible without me using it. Like I don't want to use it the whole session. That wouldn't be helpful. So by the end of our walk, one thing I always tell owners is each time that you correct for being pushy with him, being pushy with heel, I want you to dial up a little bit. This prevents nagging with the e-collar because if you keep using the same level over and over and over because you think it's high, but your dog is like, I don't care. I'm going to keep doing the same thing over and over. You just end up nagging your dog and it's not helpful. So I like to encourage owners to dial up a little each time so that you don't nag your dog. So when we got closer to the car, she got a little bit higher on the e-collar and Jax was being whiny and started like jumping up a little bit. And I don't know if he bit at the leash, but it was like just a little amped up. So in moments like that, I don't want an owner to feel totally overwhelmed. So I took the e-collar and the leash and kind of showed what I would do in that moment. Because it can feel um, very stressful and like you're doing something wrong when you're using the e-collar because he did yelp. And she thought that she was hurting him. So I took the collar, took the leash. The biggest thing in moments like that is don't keep tapping. I liked that she was following through with the e-collar because I want her to feel comfortable and confident following through. So it's not just her verbal, because that ends up, that leads to a dog who thinks their owner is just bluffing. Like nothing else is going to happen. Verbal, I don't care. So following through with the e-collar when you say things like no, or, your dog barks in the house or something, following through with the e-collar is really helpful. It makes you more believable. So what I did is I took the leash. Movement is really helpful in situations like that. Really, anytime if your dog is getting, I don't know, out of like more anxious or worked up, or if you feel like you've used the e-collar for something like interrupting the anxious stuff, if your dog is being whiny, or correcting for reactivity and your dog gets a bit more amped up, my biggest piece of advice, the best thing to do is move out of the situation. Use leash guidance, some movement. So what I did is I just moved like to the end of our driveway, which is a couple of feet. And I just stayed calm. I was talking to the owner about no big deal. The best thing that we can do is use a little bit of movement. So instead of just standing in one spot while he's kind of freaking out a little bit, let's give him some guidance away. Move over here. I asked him for down, and then we just kind of let it settle. So it was one of those sticky moments where it's like, if she was doing this on her own, she might feel really bad and like she's doing something wrong. Where for me, it's always feedback. And I always know movement is really helpful, really in anything. So anytime you're wondering, what should I be doing? My dog is kind of acting different. Move out of the situation, use movement, tap on tone to keep moving on a walk. Or in that moment, let's just give some clarity with moving away from sitting here on the grass kind of a thing. So that was really helpful. So I don't even know why I went into that. I think if you are going to try and get similar results at home, one, watch Jack's 2 highlights from start to finish. Rewatch if you were following along, which I know this person was. Look and read through, seriously, print it out, read it, take notes, and follow the schedule in the 7-day reset. It will probably feel much different than your schedule, probably a bit more kennel time when you're home or a place time instead of maybe couch time or something. Just do it. Try it. 7 days, it's totally doable. And see what happens. Usually, when you change up your schedule, and I do this all the time when I get in a new training dog, and I just expect it. If it doesn't happen, it's very weird. Dogs will give you pushback. So if you get stuff like whiny stuff in the kennel or barking because you've added in a chunk of kennel time in the afternoon when you're home instead of your dog doing whatever they want, that's a totally normal part of the process. But if you have a dog like Jack's and you want to help them relax and calm down more, an emphasis on calming routines, more place time, more kennel time, heel on the walk is crucial. So something that I wanted to mention about Jax that kind of changed from that first week and that first episode I did was what I was doing was working on heel and then a loose leash walk. And I kind of hate when trainers say loose leash walking because I find it's not helpful for an owner. This is like so hypocritical because I was doing it. But with a dog like Jax, and the reason I say it's not helpful for an owner, it's nice when they have something that they can hold their dog accountable for. If I was just teaching dogs to loose leash walk and just not pull me, it'd be way easier. And with Jax, something with him, because when we would go on some longer walks and I was treating it like a hike, I would give some leash guidance away from me and say loose, just like an experiment to see like, what will he do if I do this? And he would just like walk in my bubble. I would use the e-collar as like a boundary setter. I don't want him pulling on the leash or anything like that. It's really just loosely walking with me. And with my hands-free leash, I could not hold the leash and it just felt like we were practicing off-leash skills while still having the safety net of a leash. I really liked doing that. If he was my dog, that's what I would do. And then asking for heel. So tap on tone, heel, give some leash guidance if needed. When I see a dog in person or I need him to walk closer with me. The one thing about this is he was a bit more pushy when I was inconsistent with the heel command. So I'm sharing this because I find time and time again, as much as I would do that if he was my dog, because I really wouldn't care if we're walking. And the biggest thing for me would be I just don't want him to react. And so if he's walking looser and not like in a heel position, because there's a difference. And if he was walking looser and we walk past people and dogs and he doesn't really respond, that's all I need. But I find when I'm working with owners for the transition back home from the board and train to home, being specific with the heel command is really helpful. So just wanted to mention that. I even did it with the owner at the go home session. And when I was doing it with her, I was like, oh, I just feel like he will probably be pushy with this. But I also hate the feeling of an owner feeling like the dog has to be walking perfectly in heel the whole walk because he goes in the top 5, I would say top 2 dogs of the most pushy with heel I've ever worked with. where he would need a level 95 for heel. And to me, I don't like that when a dog is so stubborn about heel. And so part of me was like, he's doing really good. Like, how can I bring out the best in him and maybe do things a little bit differently than I would with another dog? And because he reminds me of like our dog Louie. And with her, she doesn't walk in heel with us. She walks nicely with us. And the biggest thing is just don't act up. And she can do that when she's walking looser. So with him, I was practicing that, and it helped me relax a lot more on the walk, where I could enjoy it with him. And I love feeling like I'm walking, quote unquote, off leash with the dog. It's just one of my favorite things. So it kind of felt like that. But I wanted to share it because I do find that most dogs, there's no gray area. So being as consistent as possible with the rules on the walk, like heel, is 9 times out of 10 the most helpful thing you can do, because your dog will start to be like, oh, this is what we have to do. This is it. And the more you do it, the easier it gets, the less you have to ask for it. But with him, I just wanted to try. It was just, I don't know. I'm in that like era of being, I don't know. Does anyone hate when I say this? You know, how Taylor Swift brought the era stuff or whatever. But I'm in my era of doing things how I want as a trainer, doing things that maybe will feel different than another trainer. But I love the owners I work with. Like Jax's owner is so amazing. She really is. Like she told me towards the end of our go home session, like, I'm so sorry that he was like stressing you out. Because I told her my aura ring was like, you're a little more stressed than usual. And I was like, yeah. Uh, but I told her like, you're such a great owner, which is that's such a big part of the process. If I was working with an owner who was not on board with the stuff I'm doing, who just wasn't fun to work with, who wasn't appreciative, like working with an owner who's appreciative of, uh, what you do in this process, it would be much more challenging. But she's just so great. And I'm excited to be a part of the process with her so she can enjoy more with her dogs. And then I get her other dog on Wednesday. So super excited about that. But I hope this was helpful. The biggest thing I want you to know is it's just an emphasis on calm routine. So what I told Jax's owner, was whenever you're wondering what should I be doing with him, give him a job, place time, kennel time, heel on the walk. It's just, it helps, I think, to simplify things. And especially if you can get outside, you can change your perspective on, well, how much place time is too much place time? Follow up anything active. So, outside time, a walk, a bike ride, with at least an hour minimum of place time. Sometimes, what I would do after like a bike ride is I would put Jax in the kennel for calm kennel time, an hour to 2 hours, and then repeat. And it depends on your schedule, of course, but if you follow up something active, or just even, it doesn't have to be something like a super active activity, it could be like free time in the backyard, or a calm walk. So following that up with place time or kennel time is going to be really helpful. So when in doubt, give your dog a job. There is nothing that I do that you can't do. Um, there is some nuance to different things. Like that's why I try to share as much as possible here, in the hopes that you can take little pieces and be like, okay, that's something that I need to do, or I haven't heard, or I'm hearing it for the 10th time and it's finally uh, setting in. So yeah, there is something to this process where I know experience helps me, but I know there's so much you can do on your own. I think the owner would have struggled a bit with Jax if she did this on her own with him. And not to say she couldn't do it with him. So many of you have trained your dogs with the e-collar. All dogs are so different. With Jax being a chronic whiner, and me knowing, like another thing that I did with him, which made a huge difference, was my instinct was talk to him less, give him less affection. It doesn't mean I don't like him, or I am not giving him affection. It's just I was very particular about when I talked to him and when I pet on him, because with a dog like Jax, if I would pet on him whenever I wanted to, or whenever I would pet, as much as I pet my dog Johnny, anytime I'd pet Jax, he would get whiny. So if I pet him when he's whining, it's a great reinforcement for the whiny stuff. And I would also talk to him less, because when I would talk to him, or like, baby talk or whatever, or cutesy talk, or like, you so cute or something, it would get him worked up. He would visibly get super excited. And so I would hold back on that. But it was just so cool. And I hope that you can see this, or you can try it with your dogs. If you have a dog who's very excitable when you talk to them or very excitable when you pet on them, one, I know that's hard. I know it's hard to have a dog who's different than maybe dogs you had before or how you think dog ownership should be. But like a dog like Jax, it wasn't helping him if I was just constantly talking to him or petting on him, because it would just get him more amped up. And the biggest thing for me over the past few weeks working with him was, how can I help him calm down? Because a calmer dog is so much happier. Just think about yourself when you're super anxious. It's not fun. So for him, it was just trying to reinforce things that helped him calm down. So when we were walking in the backyard and he would get anxious, down, giving him the job of down was really helpful. It helped him relax sooner. Down on place was really helpful. Down in the car was really helpful. And he just became more and more enjoyable. Where I was telling the owner, it was like, I think the last day I had him and we did an outing to a park nearby. And it was a lot of like challenging stuff, when you take your dog somewhere new. Like he was a little whiny at first and then kind of settled. But we got in the car and he laid down and I went and pet his head and it was just nice. It was like, I was just thinking in my head, like, I probably even said, you did such a good job or good boy or something. But then when I was petting him and no whining, no getting worked up, it was like, this is what we want to reward. So yeah, anyway, okay, we're at 46 minutes. I try not to go too long on the podcast, but I hope this was helpful. Please let me know if you listened and it was helpful for you. Your feedback means everything to me. It's kind of like the fuel to keep me going and showing up. And doing this podcast has just been so fun. And it feels like a more intimate way to connect than on Instagram, where I primarily share stuff. And I'm just so grateful that you're here. I hope that what I shared was helpful. So, yeah. Okay, and for any of the things I talked about, I'm going to try to remember and put them in the show notes. If you don't see it, message me on Instagram at Walking Dog Training. Let me know you came from this episode. That's really helpful, just so I know you've listened to all the things. And then if there's something else you need, I'm happy to help. If you need more help, we have our e-collar starter guide, which includes our video library where you can hear me using the e-collar. I've heard that that is very helpful when introducing the e-collar to your dog. We also have our bundles. One, the Reactive Dog bundle, specifically for if you have a reactive dog, that includes our Reactive Dog handbook. And then our Anxious Dog bundle, which includes our guide to separation anxiety. So both bundles, all about how I use the e-collar with training dogs, with a lot of different links to references, and it's all in one spot. Everything I want you to know about each topic and how to effectively address it using the e-collar on your own in each bundle. And then we also have a bundle, the Walking Dog bundle, which includes everything. Bundles save you a little extra. But yeah, we have that. And then also my virtual coaching sessions, which are 30 minutes long, where I can give you individual advice almost every single time I talk with an owner or trainer. I also do trainer sessions where we can talk about business and content. Please, I would love that. But I always hear this is so reassuring. So we call them our reassurance calls. Anyway, that's all. Thank you for being here. I hope you have a great weekend. And yeah, hope this was helpful. Till next time. Bye.